Thanks so much for tuning in to the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel here for a preview of this Saturday's Grade 1 Forego at Saratoga. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel right now so you can get videos just like this for all the big races. 5 Grade 1s on Saturday. David, this one is right in the middle for some of the top tier sprinters going 7 furlongs. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Forego, where Mulligan is installed as the 8-5 morning line favorite by the man who makes the morning line right here. Mulligan looking for a 4th consecutive victory this year, 3 for 3 on the season, big speed figures, some easy wins, but now gets a real acid test in here because he won the Grade 2 Nerude last time out, but this is a much tougher group than that.
Yeah, it's been sort of a wide open older male sprint division so far this year with the retirements of Elite Power and Gunite from last season. There's really nobody who has stepped up and established himself as the leader of the dirt sprinters at the moment. And I suppose Mulligan has the chance to become that horse with a victory in the Forego. Like you said, undefeated so far this season. It seems like he's got the potential to step into that role, but he's got to prove it in this race because he's facing a pretty evenly matched field, even if it's not the strongest Grade 1 that we've ever seen in this division.
Take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector and see how they have this race playing out, with Mulligan very close to the front end, Anchor right there, Twisted Ride down to the inside. I know you like Anchor a little bit in here, David, and one thing in looking at his races, he's drawn well. When he draws towards the outside, he generally runs pretty well. He's a horse who just likes to be towards the outside, doesn't mind having a little bit more of a wide trip, and that could be the case for him, forwardly placed and wide in here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this pace develops. Obviously, Mulligan is a horse who likes to be forwardly placed in his races, doesn't necessarily need to be on the lead by himself outright. So you would imagine that horses like the 2, Twisted Ride, might feel some impetus to go forward from the inside position. I think Baby Yoda is going to be a key player in this pace projection because she's shown back and forth early. I think the connections would love it if he was quick enough to get in front of these early or potentially be contesting the pace, because that seems how Baby Yoda runs when he has success in his races, as he did 2 and 3 back. Typically gets a little bit discouraged when he's behind horses early. So if Tyler Gaffleon's able to play the break with Baby Yoda, maybe he's one who's able to mix it up on the front end. But I do agree about the number 7 Anchor. I think he's a horse that, breaking outside of all these speeds, might be able to sit the right kind of stalking trip.
Grade 1 Forego, $500,000 up for grabs on Saturday. Let's take a look at this field horse by horse, named for the Hall of Famer and 3-time Horse of the Year, Forego. We kick it off with Gun Pilot to the inside. David, his big win was in the Grade 1 Churchill Downs 2 starts back. And when you start to look at that race as a Grade 1, though, I'm just not sure how strong it really was. I mean, we saw horses like Hear Me Song, who came back to run 4th in the Aristides, then won a smaller stakes race at Ellis. Zozos was in there. He finished 9th and 6th in his next 2 races. We saw the 3rd place finisher come back and run 3rd and 4th in non-graded stakes. We had Hoist the Gold finish 3rd and 3rd in the next 2. Mr. Wireless was 2nd and 6th in his next 2. We just haven't seen horses coming out of that Grade 1 run well. So I'm a little bit curious about how strong it really was.
I would agree with all of that. I think you could say a lot of the same things about this Forego, though. It's a Grade 1 that doesn't really have the star power you expect in a Grade 1, so maybe it's not that much of a step up in class for Gun Pilot. His last race in the True North is obviously a bit of a problem. He didn't show up that day as the 3-5 favorite. Some might say that the speed bias that we saw developing on Belmont Stakes Racing Festival weekend might have worked against him that day. He just never really seemed like he was, enjoying the pace of that race or keeping up at any point. So he's got to rebound in this spot. He's gotten a brief freshening since then. I'm not going to be surprised when he runs a better race. I just don't know if I'd want to take that sort of price on him. And I think with that Grade 1 victory showing, he might be one of the choices in here.
Yeah, he's not really as naturally quick as some of the others in here. So sometimes he gets caught behind horses and a little bit of traffic down on the rail. Might not be easy for him. Let's move to number 2 in here, Twisted Ride, who has multiple graded stakes placed. He's coming off a career best effort where he earned a 100 buyer speed figure, finishing 3rd in the Vanderbilt behind Nakatomi that day. He was close up early. He kept trying hard all the way, and he is proven at 7 furlongs. He's a 3-time winner going this distance. How do you feel about Twisted Ride in this spot?
I don't want to be too hard on this horse. I think he's going to be a big price in this race, and he's coming off a performance in the Vanderbilt that makes him competitive against this field, earning a 100 buyer against the likes of Nakatomi and Skelly, who are arguably just as talented, if not more talented, than any horse that's in this Forego. The 7 furlongs, it's a little bit of a question mark. He has won going the distance, but has done so against weaker company, mostly in Pennsylvania. He's a horse who has come to New York in the past and hasn't run nearly as well previously as he did last time in that Vanderbilt. So I wonder if that was somewhat of a fluke. He still has to prove it to me, but like I said, he's going to be a big price in this race, and he does have that competitive speed figure.
Full screen, just one for the last 12, but that victory came in his most recent race when he earned a 94 Buyer speed figure. He's faced some good horses as of late. You see sharp horses like Looms Boldly, Arthur's Ride, who had a 110 and 111 Buyer speed figures in his last couple. So full screen will step up integrated stakes company now. You do see Subrogate, who he faced a couple starts back, who was disappointing in their Vanderbilt there. How do you think full screen stacks up against this field?
I think you could make the argument that the shorter distances have really worked for him. Some things went wrong prior to the start, too, back at Saratoga, so maybe you want to draw a line through that one. But he ran well last time going the 7 furlong distance. I think he's facing better horses here than he did in that race. The likes of Federal Judge and Costa Terra, they'd be bigger prices in a spot like this. But he's going out for Mark Casse, who has been on fire so far during this Saratoga meet. So don't want to be too hard on him either. He's 20-1 on my morning line, and he does have some races that could put him on the fringes of being competitive in here, but probably more so for an underneath spot.
One of the tougher horses I have to get a read on is Baby Yoda nowadays. He was a horse who started out 3 for 4 in his career. And his big win came back in 2021 when he had a 114 Buyer speed figure. Since then, I think it's probably fair to say he's been a little bit disappointing. He's been inconsistent. The True North was actually his first stakes victory in his 10th try against Stakes Company. But he loves Saratoga. He's won 4 of his 7 starts here. He has some speed. He has the ability to sit off a little bit. He's such an enigma to me as a handicapper, David. I just never can get a real sense of when he's going to run big. What do you think about his chances on Saturday?
Yeah, he's got that reputation as being this Saratoga horse for course. It was sort of based on that one race from back in 2021 for a long time, but he kind of gave some credence to that notion to back when he upset the True North at 9-1 that day. And I kind of feel like that was probably the day to have Baby Yoda. That was a race that didn't feature a whole lot of speed, and he was able to get forward. Like I said, he's a horse who runs his best races when he's able to be in the mix early in the race, and he was not able to get that position last time in the Vanderbilt. He was just outrun by faster horses, the likes of Skelly and other speeds in that race, Twisted Ride included. So Baby Yoda, he's got to run a different kind of race here, and maybe stretching out to the 7 furlongs is going to help him get a little more forward in this race. I just wonder if even at his ceiling, thinking about that True North, maybe it was a little aided by the track bias that day. I wonder if he's quite good enough to beat some of these horses, but he probably is going to be closer to the 9-1 that he was in the True North than the 3-1 that he was last time in the Vanderbilt.
The number 5 is Run Classic, who will make his second start back off a little bit of a layoff. And I think for Run Classic, you can just eliminate the races going a little longer than 7 furlongs. That was just a bit too much for him. And when you isolate those races, it feels like 7 furlongs is his perfect trip, David. We can take a look at his last start on a replay of the Smile Sprint. This was going 6 furlongs. I felt like this was a perfect setup for him making his first start back and kind of pointing to a big race like this going 7 furlongs at Saratoga.
Yeah, the winner of this race, I don't know where the performance came from. He was a Saffie Joseph horse that I think was claimed for just $25,000, but has since now turned into an effective dirt sprinter, now 2 for 2 on the dirt. So I'm not sure exactly what kind of horse was beating Run Classic that day, but it seems like one that was in razor sharp form at the time. But also, I think you can forgive Run Classic. It was his first start coming back from Dubai, and you go back and watch that Golden Shaheen. He didn't have the best trip that day. He was wide every step of the way. That was a race that was dominated by a horse that rode the rail to a decisive victory. And you go back to his Gulfstream Park Sprint, he was really impressive in victory that day, beating a nice horse in Candyman Rocket. And as you said, when you start to parse his form, he's run really well in these elongated sprints, particularly going 7 furlongs. So I think it's pretty easy to make a case for this horse, and he might be a fair price.
Yeah, just kind of looking at his form overall too. I mean, that last field, Sibelius, grade 1 winner, Octane, graded stakes winner were in there. They were also rans in that race too. So he did finish in front of a couple okay horses. And I think he fares very well at the 7 furlongs in here. Number 6 is Mulligan. He's the horse to beat, David. He's looking for his 4th in a row, and he's just really sharp right now. He teased ability last year. It's not as if he was a bad horse last year. He just was still kind of green and not able to mature and put it all together. A few months off, comes back this year and just like a brand new horse in a few months, a little more than a few months when he was off from July all the way to April of 2024. But he feels like the horse to beat in here.
Yeah, we could take a look at his John Nehrude victory, where he was pretty game to pull away from some nice horses, including Coastal Mission, who isn't exactly a grade one quality rival, but seems to run well in every race that he participates. He's a really versatile runner from the Charlestown circuit. Mulliken is coming into this race as, I think, the horse to beat based on his 3 victories this year, but it is going to be a step up in class for him. And I think he's also potentially going to face a more competitive pace scenario than he has encountered in a few of his recent starts. If you look at Timeform US, the pace figures for his allowance victory 2-back are all color-coded in blue, indicating a slow pace. Last time, not blue color-coded pace figures, but it was definitely a rising pace figure line, indicating that it was another race flow that might have favored a horse like him. So I think he's going to face some more competition towards the front end in this race, and it remains to be seen if he can fend off some more capable pace rivals and still run the kind of speed figure that's going to make him the horse to beat in this race. I think he's a contender to be sure. I don't want to take a price lower than 2-1 on him, though.
Yeah, he does feel like a horse from a gambling standpoint who's kind of worth taking a shot against on the top end in this particular spot. Next door, an intriguing price player for a barn, the Philip Bauer barn, who has been excellent all throughout the meet. As we are recording, he's won with 5 of his 10 starters at Saratoga so far. And Anchor comes off of a runner-up effort behind Close the Game Sugar. Close the Game Sugar, while not in graded stakes races at Churchill, went over to Del Mar and finished second in a grade 1 in the Bing Crosby behind one of the best sprinters right now in the Chosen Vaughn.
Yeah, and I think as we talk about some of the horses in this race and say, well, they're coming out of races that aren't quite grade 1 quality, if they're not quite facing horses as good as the ones they're meeting today, Anchor has faced some really nice horses in recent starts. I mean, you mentioned Close the Game Sugar. He got a 101 buyer in that runner-up finish to that dominant horse out in Southern California. And Anchor ran really well against Close the Game Sugar last time out in that Kelly's Landing. I know that was just a listed stakes race at Churchill, but it was arguably a listed stakes that was of graded stakes quality, with Hoist the Gold finishing third that day. He's the Cigar Mile winner from last season who has done well in grade 1 stakes in the past. I can give him an excuse for the Aristides 2-back. He was facing Skelly that day, and you could see that his rider, Martin Garcia, was reluctant to get into a duel with Skelly and was trying to wrangle this runner back to the inside of that foe who was rushing up to the outside. And I just think it took Anchor out of his best style, which is being on the chase, and he was just always under a hammerlock through the early stages of that race. I'm willing to draw a line to that performance, and when you do, his form outside of that is really strong. You go 3-back, he beat Close the Game Sugar by over 4 lengths, and I just think he's a little underrated coming in here, even going out for a barn that has been so hot at this meet, and it doesn't hurt to get Irad Ortiz aboard at Saratoga, especially at a price.
Yeah, last year he was competitive with horses like Saudi Crown, wasn't beating a whole lot there. And when you really do look at his last 3 wins, they've all come when he's drawn towards the outside. He projects to get a trip that he's run very well when he's received that same trip before. Let's finish up this field, David, to the outside with the number 8 Cagliostro, who is another really honest horse. I mean, you toss some of his races that are going a little bit longer, one of them at 1 mile and 1/8, the one at 1 mile and 3/16, and you're left with some really, really nice form. I think being drawn to the outside probably gives him some options there. They can probably pick out a nice spot and try to stalk off the pace a little bit, and he should have a little more late punch. Facing some nice horses in here, but as we're going through the field, there's nobody that scares you, right? There's no monsters. It's just a solid field, maybe 4 or 5 other really good horses. I think he fits here.
Yeah, when you first look at his form, you might say, is this really a grade 1 horse? But then you start to look through, and he's run some speed figures that put him right in the mix against these horses. And the big question is the turn back in distance to 7 furlongs. But when you watch his recent races, especially the races since Cherie DeVoe has applied blinkers 3 starts ago, he's just been really engaged early in his races. And he's also really sharp away from the gate every time he's breaking on top. And I think that's a good sign for a horse that's going to turn back in distance. He's got that tactical speed. And not only that, but he's drawn to the outside of all these other speed horses. So it's not like he's going to find himself in a situation where he's taking all of his kickback, getting outrun to the inside with others crossing over. He's going to be able to get into a more comfortable rhythm racing outside of those horses early. So I expect him to run well in this race. I think he's a horse that some people might land on here. So I don't know if you're going to get the 9-2 as I think about some of these lines in retrospect. Maybe he's one that I would have had a little shorter on the line. But I do think he's definitely a major player in this race.
Let's take a look at how we are going to approach this race from a betting standpoint. Hopefully we can help lead some of you in the right direction. David, we're both looking for a little bit of value in this race. You're going to go with Anchor on top.
Yeah, like I was making the case before, I think when you start to take apart his form, he's run really well against legitimate competition. The 7 furlongs seems like a distance that works for him, and it's easy to envision him getting a pretty good trip in this race, breaking towards the outside. So I'm going to put him on top. He's 12 to 1 on my line. I'd be happy to get anything around 7 or 8 to 1, especially given how hot this barn has been so far at the meet. It just seems like Phil Bauer is winning with every other starter, and the stats would back that up.
Yeah, I'm going to go 5, 6, 7, 8. I put Run Classic on top. Talk about if you really isolate those 7 furlong races. I think second start off the bench, second start back. He's really coming into this race well and could sit a nice trip in here. So the 7 anchor for David. I'll put Run Classic on top. We're both taking a little swing against Mulligan on the win end. However, you're playing this one on Saturday. We wish you the best of luck.